Hey everyone, welcome to the KE report and a company update from Kootenay Silver. Chatting with the president and CEO Jim McDonald. Company is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol KTN and on the OTCQX under the symbol KOOYF. We are recapping the most recent drill results from the Columba Project in Mexico. The final results from last year's 20,000 meter program. Jim, let's just start off by reminding everybody what this program was all about. We've covered and discussed a lot of the drill results, but they've been coming out in really kind of a spaced out form here. So I think it is good to bring everybody up to speed on what the goals were around this program now that we have all the results released.
Yeah, so we started the program last year. The drilling physically finished up this winter, and the whole purpose of the program was to expand on the zones that we had already identified, especially on that fabulous D vein where we're getting the best grades and widths to date. And prior to the 20,000 meters that we've just finished up and reported on, we had drilled approximately 30,000 meters of drilling on a number of veins, had some really great hits across, especially three of those veins. And we calculated that with another 20,000 meters, we'd probably have enough to get a maiden resource out. That was our whole objective. Let's get a maiden resource out here, and results pending. And we've had fabulous results all the way through. So now we've drilled just slightly over 50,000 meters in total on the property over the last few years. And the last of the assays from the last phase are out, and we're well advanced on modeling and working on a maiden resource. So that is not very far away.
All right. Well, I think the market is going to be anticipating what the resource looks like here at Columba. Now, I know that we've talked in the past about a number of veins, the F vein, which has had a lot of the historic work on it, this D vein, which is really the center of mass, and that's what we'll be talking about today. And there's also the B vein, the I vein, some other veins in there that'll make it into that resource. But D has really been the workhorse here. This is the widest intercepts on the project, some of the best grades. And the headline hole here, 199, didn't disappoint, Jim. You've got some really good grades here. 620 grams per ton silver, 0.31 grams per ton gold, 1% lead, 3.6% zinc, over 16 meters. And within there's some really high impact, almost bonanza grade intercepts of silver grade over more narrow widths. But this hole has a lot of different chunks to it, a lot of different pieces. So tell us what you learned from hole 199 and how that fits into the bigger picture of what you're learning at the D vein.
Yeah, well, 199 is a continuation of a zone within the D vein that's really thickened and enriched within the D itself. So fabulous results as you pointed out here, real fat intercepts, real high grade. Some of the highest grades we've hit are in that hole over 7 kilos of silver, up to almost, well, over 30% lead zinc over a narrower interval inside of that, and very consistent great continuity as well through this intercept, which is characteristic of the whole D vein. Now, this 199, where it's positioned on the western side of the D vein, it's one of the deepest holes. It's wide open to depth underneath it. There's nothing immediately underneath it. In fact, there's only about one or two holes, possibly even deeper. And it is part of an area where there's several holes now with really good similar fat intervals of real high grade, like hole 125 and hole 110. There's several others in there as well. But 110 sits well above it, as it does 125. And 125 is where there was a 34 meters, a half kilo, and almost 10 meters of that was 1,700 grams per ton. So this zone is really enriched and elevated in base metal as well, and seems to be picking up gold. And I don't know if we can say yet in a consistent manner in this particular zone, but it's a real fattened zone within the vein, and you'll get these dilations and openings in veins. It's quite typical and wide open to depth. And we'll add in there this other hole, 196B. And if you go to our news release and look at the long section, you'll see it way at the bottom left-hand corner of the long section. Well, it's indicating to us that the vein's continuing for at least another 200 to 250 meters underneath this hole under in 199. So things are wide open because that would carry almost double the vertical extent of that particular zone. Really exciting.
Jim, just a little more on that 196B. As you said, on that cross section, that long section, it's way down there on the map. You mentioned that it hit a 4.5 meter cavern, and the actual result here, low grade silver, but high lead zinc components. So, what could that possibly mean for just what happened to the mineralization?
Well, we've seen that in a few holes on the D vein, especially in this on the western end there, and you get these cavities. We think they're dissolution cavities from the carbonate vein being dissolved back out by acidic mineralizing fluids, literally. But they are just cavities within the vein. But what it tells us is yet the vein was there and it was wide and there's grade because the rock coming into that the missing part of the vein is grading decent lead zinc, good width. And so we know when we carry that 199 hole down deeper, we got real great probabilities of hitting some pretty good mineral down there. And if it does do that, it will substantially add to the volume of mineral that we already have established.
Well, Jim, just to that point, I guess when you look ahead to the drilling that's to come, I think a lot of people will look at this result and think, what's the follow-up here on hole 199? Are you going to go deeper like 196B? What other holes could you press at depth? Because you have on that long section noted the potential down there at depth, but like you say, there's only really one hole down there, that 196B. So should a lot of these holes be continued at a further depth? Do you expect to see more base metals and all of those as well, more lead and zinc as well? Or do you think the silver could keep running down there? Give us your thoughts on what the follow-up drilling around this western part of the project would look like.
Yeah, well, two parts there. Yeah, first of all, absolutely, we'll be going deeper across that whole panel. In fact, across the whole strike length of the vein that we've defined so far, which is over 1,200 meters in length. And it will definitely be going deeper. It's wide open at depth. The indications of that one deep hole are indicative of what we may expect, that we know that it keeps going. So very, very exciting. And when you look to the on the long section, you'll notice the western half is pretty well drilled, and the eastern half is sparsely drilled, wide space holes, generally around 200 meters apart. So there's going to be closing the gaps over there as well to get to 100 meter spacing, because that's what you need just to get yourself to an inferred resource category, and going deeper down there as well. So the whole panel along there is opened up, first of all in the western half, but also to depth across the entire thing. So yeah, the D vein is going to quite a great depth and could go even further. So super potential down there. Absolutely, the next round is going to be testing that and trying to find the limits.
Jim, what do you prioritize then? It sounds like this depth component is important, but as we see on this long section, right, there's not nearly as much drilling to the east. You even mentioned to us that essentially stuff is open all around the D vein. So, where do you prioritize after you get this resource out and when you get back on the ground?
Well, you will close off the known good trends that you have. Like definitely you'll be going deeper early on 199. And also it's quite low hanging fruit to fill those big 200-meter gaps in the eastern half. That's a priority. And then start pushing deeper there once those the results of those holes guide you on how you go deeper or where you go deeper as well. So in in general, the whole D vein is a priority.
Yeah, the D vein is definitely where you're massing up a lot. And so as you build towards this resource that's coming out in the near future, I'm anticipating based on what we're talking about here, Jim, that most of that's going to be on the western side. Probably not a lot of the eastern side's even going to be included yet. Is that the way you're looking at it?
Yeah, the maiden resource here for in terms of D vein, most of what we see is going to be from that western half because of drill spacing. The eastern half, most of it's too wide spacing. There'll be some, imagine there'll be some resources there pulled in, but in general, yes, it's the majority is going to come out of that western half just by the drill density you see there.
Do you have a ballpark number of how many meters are going to be able to be included in this upcoming resource?
Well, we'll be able to pull them all in. We've been designing our vein models all the way along, and now we have all the final results. So these last holes are pretty, it doesn't take a lot of time to add them into the model.
Well, and Jim, since we've been talking about the D vein for this, and this is rightly so, this is really, like we say, the center of mass here, but you will be including some from the B vein, a little bit from the F vein, which has a lot of that historic work on it, but then also you've put some holes into other veins we've talked about before, like the I vein. How many of these other veins are actually going to make it in, or what percentage of the holes drilled will make it in a rough sense?
Well, very little percentage outside of those three veins that you mentioned. The eye, there might be a little pulled in there, and the J vein is the other structure. We got quite a few holes in that area, and so probably we'll have a little bit pulled in there. But really, the majority is going to be on those three veins on this round.
All right. Well, hey, when that resource comes out, we'll definitely get you back on the show then, Jim. If you could just recap how the company's doing for cash and what the lay of the land is to get drills back on the ground post resource, please.
Yeah, so we're just under 2 million. We're in a pretty good position here cash wise. We'll need to finance the next round because we want the size of the next drill program to be at least 20,000 meters. And that would require a raise of around 6 million Canadian, approximately. And 20,000 meters just on the D vein would give you a 100-meter spacing across the D vein down to a depth of between 1,400 and 1,500 meters above sea level in general. So it would add quite a bit to that D vein potentially. So these are all sort of market driven in the future, but that's what we want to do for a minimum program, and that's what the raise would require.
Well, and Jim, just as we stand back and look at the Columba project overall, I've been following Kootenay Silver for a long time, and I've watched you build resources at some of the other projects that we haven't even talked about here. But this is the first project I've seen these big, wide, high grade, you got the high grade and the width coming together here at Columba. So how would you differentiate this project in the silver space? I know that there's base metals in there. I know there's some gold in there, but in general, there's a lot of high grade silver. So how does this compare to other projects you've looked at in the industry or just other projects even in Mexico?
Well, it compares really well. It's probably easily our best discovery to date because of the grades here and the widths. And so the potential of the economics and the margins on something you mine look very good. And when you see the depth of how deep it's going at a minimum, it really opens up the potential and probabilities for upside and size here, significant size. So, we're seeing grade and width we need to now establish size to show that, hey, this thing could be a mine. We've been talking about hole 199, and but let's go back to 196A. That intercept was 123 grams, true width 63 meters. That's incredible width in there. Now, on a narrow vein, generally the cutoffs are 150, 180 grams per ton. And in Mexico, as a rule of thumb on narrow stuff, when you're getting 63 meters true width, well, that it's a good chance that whole interval would be taken in a mining scenario. So it's really exciting project, and it stacks up well against almost any of the new discoveries down there in Mexico. Certainly, it's a great discovery.
Jim, do you think you're going to move to putting some sort of economics after this resource, or is this still much more growing the resource, growing the project, more that exploration angle?
Yeah, the next phase will be to grow it, to make that resource bigger, and then look at whatever that number is and make your decision based on that. If you maybe it's 1 round or 2 rounds more drilling before you want to get into a PEA, and that'll be dictated by that work.
Well, Jim, just one more on the different veins. Yeah, as you said, you've got a lot of drilling. That 20,000 meters, you could do it all at the D vein if you want to do because there's so much potential there. But of the other veins, like the B vein, and there was that B2 vein in the parallel, there's also, continuing to build out F and I. Is there any other vein, like what would you put in second place behind D as the other vein that you really want to put a little more exploration focus on in the season to come?
Yeah, so the next round would be that B vein corridor. There's at least three veins there. And we've got pretty good modeling on it now and understand it a lot better. And it is, relatively speaking, lightly drilled and holds a lot of potential there for additional size. So that would be number two. Going to depth on the F vein is important as well. But that B vein corridor, that would be the sort of second priority after D at this point in time.
All right, Jim. Thank you for this update. Look, it sounds like we're going to be chatting again fairly soon when that resource is released and what the follow-up drill program looks like when that all comes together for you. I'll post a link to the Kootenay Silver website in the show notes. Please, everyone, click that link. Send us any questions you have for Jim. And Jim, thank you for taking the time to highlight these drill results. We'll follow up with you on the back of that resource.
Great. Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it.